Today we're going to be putting in another entry into my How to Flank series on BattleBit. The map we will be focusing on, as you can probably already tell by the title, is Frugis. Now I don't actually have a specific route that I'm going to present to you guys. Instead, this video is going to present a hodgepodge of tips that I think will improve your flanking experience on Frugis. With that said, let's jump right into the video. Now what makes flanking hard on Frugis is the fact that there's action constantly going on everywhere. So it can be rather hard to discreetly travel around the map without getting noticed by at least some players. However, on the flip side, this does mean that a lot of objectives have the potential to be flanked, for large battles and stalemates are constantly popping up. Thus, for this video, we will be looking at a couple objectives to be flanking on. This includes B, C, D, and F. Now this first tip might be obvious to some, but I do know from experience in game that a lot of players get confused by the tunnels that run underground Frugis. So we're going to do a quick rundown on how to understand the tunnels and how to use them to your advantage. Now there are two main tunnel lines that run throughout the entire map. There's the blue line and then there's the orange line. The blue line is the main line that connects B to C to D, while the orange line is a line that runs directly underneath the blue line, except it does so for a shorter distance. Now of course there are some other components to these underground tunnels. There are side passages along both the orange and blue lines, and then there are the corridors that lead up to the F objective and to exits that lead to the top of the C objective. And then there is technically a green line that can be found throughout the map when you just have a small tunnel that's kind of connecting different buildings or different objectives. I find it weird that they included this, but I guess it's good to know that it's there. And then one more great tip to know is that the total volume of all these lines are represented on the map with this olive green color that runs through the normal map colors. Honestly, I didn't realize this was there until like a couple days ago when I was trying to make this video. Now that you understand the situation down there, here's the approach that I think you should take when using these lines to flank. Since the action in the tunnels will almost always be located at the C objective and in the corridors above the C objective, you should always start the flank at the metro line entrance closest to your spawn. This is to ensure maximum survival success, as the other entrances are always going to carry the chance of being killed by random enemies who are just there. Then, since we are constantly trying to keep encounters at a minimum, you should be trying to use the side corridors and the orange line as much as possible. It is at this point that I also recommend trying to find a good place for a squad beacon, as this will make flanks a lot more faster and easier to reproduce. Now timing is of the utmost importance when trying to flank on the C objective, because you want to flank when enemies are trying to flood out of the objective instead of trying to hold it against a flood of your own teammates. I know this difference might seem small, but it greatly improves your chances of catching your enemy by surprise when you're down at the C objective. And it is personally at these times that I've had my greatest success in flanking down at the C objective. And while trying to flank through these tunnels as enemies are coming into the C objective is not impossible, your chances of surviving those encounters are little to none. And at that point, it's no longer really a flank, you're just kind of encountering enemies as they're rushing into an objective. Basically, you're going to create the stalemate for the next guy to be able to flank. Next, I'm going to go over the B and D objectives. And this route might be unknown for a lot of players, as I only found out about it by going into spectator mode and traveling underneath the Frugis map. See, inside each spawn are these small tunnels that lead to areas right outside B and D, and these tunnels are great resources for flanking when the enemy has pushed too far past these objectives. Unfortunately, and this is just the way it works out, but the tunnel on the B side is much more useful than the tunnel on the D side. And when you're using the tunnel on the D side, you need to bring both a grappling hook and explosives, for while that tunnel has a ladder, that ladder can be destroyed, leaving you stranded. However, regardless of those drawbacks, I think both of these tunnels have great potential to be great flanking tools. Now obviously that just leaves the F objective to talk about. And for the F objective, I have a rather creative and risky way that I think you should approach it. You see, the devs made this objective more of a bastion by closing off some of the buildings that surround the F objective. So flanking the F objective can be very difficult if you can't come from underneath the objective. So what I think you should do is grapple up the buildings that have their windows closed and try to take the objective from a top-down approach. And while I know this map has a lot of snipers that like to hang out on top of rooftops, I think it's a lot easier to evade them rather than the infantry that likes to run around on the ground. And honestly, because the F objective is so chaotic, as long as you're not running straight at the main line of defense, you can really come in from any angle and have a shot at a pretty good flank. But before I end this video, there's one more tip that I want to touch on. If enemies are trying to flank out of the C objective like we talked about before, there's actually a pretty good chance you could surprise them by coming down into the top windows of the C metro exits. A lot of times these players are so focused about what's going on outside of those exits that they don't even know that you're there. Well, that pretty much wraps it up for this video. If you liked what you saw, please tell me in the comments or just leave a like on the video. Maybe if you're feeling extra spicy, you might click that subscribe button. Speaking of subscribers, I want to thank y'all so much for 100 subs, and here's to 100 more. And as always, thank y'all so much for watching.
Oh, the whole day here.